Welcome to the conversation. My name is Chris Kaim, and with me today is Dr. Vassilios Damiras. Vassilios, how are you doing today?
Fine, thank you very much.
Good. Today we're going to talk about the Islamic State, formerly known as ISIS, or the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. ISIS, or the Islamic State, has made world news basically over the last few weeks after declaring itself as a ruling caliphate in large swaths of land in northern and northwestern Iraq and and eastern parts of Syria. And Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the nom de guerre of the leader of ISIS or the Islamic State, declared himself as the Caliph, or the Muslim ruler that's the equivalent to the Catholic Pope, and declared himself ruler over all the Muslim population. Um Vassilios, what do you make of this news? This is a very significant time in the Middle East because what we have here is we have a individual who has been the leader of ISIS, a notorious terrorist group that even Al Qaeda itself has distanced from. Um, Basically, the ruler over a billion Muslims. Um, this obviously has a lot of ramifications, both regionally and globally. But first, I want to get your take on what you think about the situation as it had unfolded over the last few weeks.
I think we have now the establishment or the creation of a Islamic slash jihadi terrorist nation state or a state, that kind of an entity. He wants to obviously incorporate parts of Syria and Iraq. Obviously, Iraq has also in that region the oil, and from there to dominate also the Middle East and Central Asia. Is significant because in a way we'll see how successful will be, because for the first time a terrorist organization moves to have also to become a more organized or political entity and have its own state.
Well, it's not necessarily the first. There's Hamas in the Gaza Strip, which is another topic we'll talk about soon enough. There's also Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, both these organizations are declared terrorist organizations, at least by the United States of America. Now, what's interesting with regards to Hamas is that while it is considered a terrorist organization through and through by the United States, it is the militant wing of Hamas is only declared a terrorist organization by several European countries, notably Great Britain, whereas the humanitarian organizations that Hamas has created is not. Now, what's interesting about Hamas as a terrorist organization being basically a political entity is that one can say that they have always been a political entity, but they have combined their militancy, their Islamic militancy specifically, with that humanitarianism, in which it has helped garner the support of the local population. And some argue that the Islamic State could follow the same or a similar path in an effort to legitimize itself and become a credible force within the Muslim world.
Well, you are correct. The only thing Hamas and even Al Qaeda in Afghanistan already they have their own developed entities, but also they found already states, Lebanon with Hamas, and also with Gaza Strip and so on and so forth, and Afghanistan with Al Qaeda. But now we have, from in a way, from a creation from the beginning, a state that will be, it's evolving as the terrorist organization, or this part of group or sectarian group tries to evolve. And for this reason, I said for the first time, yes, you are correct. We have also other terrorist organizations that they had their own kind of nation state support. Even if you mentioned Hamas, but even the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, it was a similar kind of engagement, or a marriage
Mm-hmm.
that happened. But the other significant thing that also the Europeans afraid and waiting, and other major players, is how the United States will react to that. And
It's not just the United States. It's pretty much the whole world. Now, reactions to the Islamic State essentially being created, and the global reaction to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi um, it being declared Caliph or declaring himself Caliph,
yes,
um, a lot of it has been condemned. Not many people in the Muslim world seems to recognize al-Baghdadi as the Caliph. Not many people seem to recognize the Islamic State as the Islamic State. Even Al-Qaeda has distanced himself from the Islamic State and had denounced ISIS, and prior to that Al-Qaeda of Iraq and of the past, denounced the organization as being too extreme. Now this is ironic given that this is from the same organization that took down the World Trade Center, September 11th attacks, and various other terrorist attacks around the world. But there's always been that divide between the two organizations, Al Qaeda, Bin Laden's Al Qaeda, I should say, to specify, and of course the Islamic State. So those two groups are separate, even though at one time they used to be one. Of course, national governments like Iraq, of course, Iran, Syria, the United States, they do not recognize the Islamic State. Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states do not recognize the Islamic State, and so one can question the effectiveness of how the Islamic State can operate if you have no one to really recognize them. There is one report came out today that an Al Qaeda splinter group in North Africa had declared its allegiance to the Islamic State, and this is after when al-Baghdadi had published a video, the infamous video of him wearing that Rolex watch,
Yes.
which he went around, which he declared and wanted the Muslims around the world to pledge their allegiance to him and to the Islamic State. Um, but even so, it's concerning in that you have an organization that is trying to legitimize itself as a national government, but really a religious national government, a theocracy, and that of a very hardline theocracy. But no one wants to actually recognize them because, well, there are a variety of reasons. Because it encroaches on their own power in the region, especially Saudi Arabia. So it seems to me that global reaction has been very limited in that everyone pretty much denounces the Islamic State for its existence. But even so, that's not to deny that they are a capable fighting force, the Islamic State or members of the Islamic State, and that they could possibly gain more land as time goes on.
Well, yeah, we have also an infighting. Obviously, the Islamic State will, if it becomes more powerful, will want to influence and take under its control the other jihadi terrorist groups or even Al Qaeda. I mean, it's not surprising that you have kind of infighting. But right now we have some verbal condemnation, but the Europeans, I don't know what they can do. I mean, NATO can react if the time comes. But again, I see a very slow kind of reaction and how to deal with the threat. And everybody, I mean, Russia also
Hmm.
has also a Muslim or a jihadist problem,
Hmm.
but still even Putin that has a very strong rhetoric towards groups like that has not taken any steps, and in a way is also in his doorstep the Islamic State.
The Islamic State is weak, which may be evidence of the lack of international response in terms of actually destroying the Islamic State or killing its fighters on the battlefield. But um, you had mentioned infighting. Now the Naqshbandi, which is uh, a militant group, a rebel group that
Yeah.
is based in Iraq, was created after the overthrow of Saddam. The Naqshbandi group was created by former members of the Ba'athist Party, high-ranking officers of the Ba'ath Party, and played an instrumental role in having ISIS at the time operate in Iraq, and even before, but especially within the last several weeks, uh, where they have assisted ISIS in basically conducting a blitzkrieg over northern Iraq. I heard one report that ISIS, or the Islamic State as it is known now, has about 10,000 fighters operating between both Syria and Iraq, but only 1,000 may have actually taken part in the operation that had captured Mosul and several other towns and villages in northern Iraq. After the fall of those towns, there had been reports that there has been some infighting going on amongst the rank and file of the Islamic State, And now it seems that more militant, more conservative members of the Islamic State are attacking Naqshbandi members or Ba'ath Party members, or say not party but Ba'ath members, uh, because they're not considered Islamic enough. And I had a feeling that this was going to happen. I had a feeling that as soon as ISIS tried to consolidate itself as a governing body, there was going to be infighting. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that the collapse of the Islamic State will be done primarily by infighting or through external forces such as national armies coming in and fighting them?
I think it can be a combination of a process that how we can stop or dismantle the Islamic State. But right now, I mean, the only country that can do that is, and we have a presence as United States, and also we want to talk with Iran because also Iran is not also doesn't is not willing to see an Islamic State. In addition, I was reading 2 days ago that even the Gulf monarchies, they want to create their own kind of NATO, similar to NATO alliances, to take care of problems like that. But as I said before, we have a rhetoric. I don't think so. We have a clear strategy how to deal with the Islamic State.
What do you suggest?
I think obviously United States needs to take some military action towards the Islamic State. In addition, they do also that to press Maliki to resign or to become more inclusive. I think the parliament, even the Iraqi parliament, had to press in that kind of direction. Also now involves again Syria, that Syria, the situation is a messy situation. I know it's not difficult, but the lack of, I was reading also a book from a Greek scholar, but the lack of American presence, we have that kind of chaotic situation. The globe doesn't see a clear strategy. And yes, we have also other major players, Russia, China, Brazil, India, even they're meeting now, South Africa, they're meeting as a BRIC states. But these states, they are not interested so far on that kind of military action. Still is in our yard to react. Mm-hmm. And the lack of a clear strategy, that creates a problem, another problem.
And that lack of a clear strategy could be what I mentioned earlier with regards to kind of like this passive response in which the world has denounced the Islamic State and doesn't recognize
Yes.
it for the power that it claims to be.
Yes.
But that could be dangerous because we're not just dealing with the Islamic State itself, but also the reach and influence that al-Baghdadi has with people all over the world. Uh, it has been reported that Muslim fighters from Britain entered Syria to fight against the Assad regime. Same thing happened in Iraq. We have one American who became a martyr for the Islamic cause, blew himself up, and it's becoming a concerning matter now where you have people coming from Western countries fighting in Syria, in Iraq, and then coming back to their country of origin, whether it's the United States or Great Britain or France or what have you. So you have people that are battle hardened, have experience, and have the connections within, say, the Islamic State or similar groups like the Islamic State coming back to their country. Who's to say they're not planning something? Who's to say that they don't have a sleeper cell operating in their country, in their host country, similar to what you had the Hamburg cell in Germany that eventually created and carried out the September 11th attacks.
I agree. Yes, exactly. And
so it becomes not just an international issue, but it also becomes a national security issue.
Exactly. And for individual countries, I mean, we have major, and these sleeper cells can operate during major events, like we had the Mundial, or now we have the upcoming Olympic Games. You know, you can select targets, can be also very detrimental to developing and developed economies. And that can create problems. Also, now with the technology, we have also these people that communicate through the Facebook, Twitter. Now we have also that electronic kind of communications that make it much easier to communicate and gather support.
And the Islamic State has used social media
Yes,
um, very effectively. They have created YouTube accounts, they have created Twitter accounts, and they have tasked. They basically created a media department back when they were ISIS, while they were fighting Assad and while they were fighting the Iraqi army. Um, they have used social media very effectively, not just to talk about their activities in these two countries, but also to recruit fighters from overseas.
yes, and that also is very influential. How to can change public opinions. You can influence specific sectors of population, so on and so forth. Now, the war that is symmetrical, this asymmetrical warfare is not only on the battlefield, but also is on social media, is on different aspects.
It effectively changes the face of warfare itself.
Yes, yes, because right now, simultaneously when you fight a war, you want also simultaneously you fight to gain global public support. And Russia has done that. The Ukrainians they have lately in their own respective conflicts, and also we see it now with the jihadists because it's easy. It's not doesn't cost so much money, too much money. Sorry, and also you can speak to billions of people,
Hmm.
and that creates a new way how you communicate and how you explain why you fight, what you fight, and what is your purpose.
Around $400 to $500 million was allegedly stolen from Mosul Bank.
Yes.
Um, Various armaments and pieces of hardware, vehicles, artillery pieces was taken from the retreating Iraqi armies in the early stages of the Blitzkrieg in northern Iraq. Couple this with an effective social media campaign. Couple this with the rhetoric that the Islamic State espouses to their masses and to their supporters, most certainly. One cannot simply dismiss this entity as a mere rebel group that is playing pretend politics. This could be a very serious foe for not just the Western world, but for the entire world itself, that trumps that of Al Qaeda in the 1990s and early 2000s.
Yes, I agree. I think 9/11 was significant for the United States and the globe, but I think now we can have different kind of terrorist attacks. Can be a financial terrorist attack or social or using social media and so on and so forth that can have tremendous repercussions to global economy
Hmm.
and to specific country or countries or the whole globe, and that changed the whole how you fight a war. It's not anymore to have special forces or conventional forces. Now you need to have a whole intelligence apparatus how to use the mass media or the social media to communicate with the population,
Hmm.
with your own people, but also with how to gain, how you obtain and win hearts and minds.
Exactly.
And now is the social media. A
But
long time ago, we thought that will be only creating infrastructure, so on and so forth. Now is the social media also on top of that.
and that goes and that coincides with the global connectivity of our world,
Yes,
and that is thanks in part to technology and internet. If 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, going back as let's talk about the Muslim Brotherhood for a second. In 1928, the Hassan al-Banna, that created the Muslim Brotherhood, wanted to basically create what al-Baghdadi had created, though he probably wanted to do it in Turkey after the
yes,
fall of the Ottomans. Obviously, he could not have done that due to the lack of technology, the lack of connectedness that the world lacked at the time. Um, but today, it's a lot easier. And today, many of the tools are available for free and with ease of use.
yes,
And ironically, created by Western Western people, the same people that people like ISIS or the Islamic State are fighting against. But it makes their job a lot easier. and it certainly makes the job for various special forces entities, various militaries, and various intelligence agencies a lot harder because now they're responsible for not just tracking the movements and operations of the operatives of these nefarious groups, but also what they're saying online and how effective they are reaching their audience.
Yes, I agree. And I think maybe in the future, when we do reconstruction or we have an American presence in specific regions, maybe we need to give also iPads to people. I mean, a long time ago, if you remember from the Second World War, you had the soldiers giving chocolates.
Hmm.
Maybe now we need to carry iPads and give them because now it's more important for a teenager or even for a person, an adult, to have an iPad and knows how to use it and communicate and rate and so on and so forth.
Right.
That kind of the revolution of the new technology that has created that everybody wants to have immediately information and immediately kind of connectivity.
Right. 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 Well, I mean, it's a high idea, obviously, but it's interesting nonetheless. My theory behind the Islamic State is that it won't last. My theory is that it will eventually fracture. Something will happen to al-Baghdadi. Odds are he'll probably be assassinated, if not by a special forces unit, whether it's from Iran, Iraq, the United States, Israel, or any other country. It'll be by his own people. Um, the group will fracture again, just like they did in Syria, just like they did prior to that with Al Qaeda. And I think that at that point, it'll probably be more dangerous to track these guys down, or rather more difficult to track these guys down and arrest them or kill them, because now they're all over the place. They're all now split off in different groups, and it makes tracking them a little bit more difficult. Um,
And one footnote was mentioned
yes,
about the Rolex that he was wearing in Europe. I was reading some Greek blogs. They thought that it was a conspiracy theory that behind him is United States, how he can afford a Rolex.
of
That
course,
means
of
it's
course.
United States who wants to create a new world order. And I was laughing, but I mean again the issue about instead of saying look at him, he's a hypocrite. They say no, you see, he's a Western kind of figurehead that
Hmm.
the United States wants to use it to influence the Middle East.
Right, of course, absolutely. There is a tinge of hypocrisy there. It's certainly ironic when you have the very same organizations looking to kill Westerners have no problem using their tools, their material products, their weapons, and then most certainly the money.
Yeah.
One can't help but just laugh at the whole thing in that
Yes.
regards. But on a more serious note, the threat that the Islamic State poses for pretty much the entire world is significant. In fact, the Huffington Post came out with an article today saying that this could possibly be a precursor to World War III. Of course, that's debatable, but the
That,
significance of that acknowledgement is telling because it very well could be.
yes. Yeah. I mean, you don't know. I mean, I hope not. But I think we live in a very fluid kind of global situation that you have also states that they want to redefine themselves, but also now you have non-state actors that they want maybe to become states and create that kind of different political challenges. And we see that kind of tectonic kind of shiftings between nation states and also these kinds of terrorist non-state actors. And we'll see. And for this reason, as I said before, that United States needs to be more engaged
Hmm.
and lead because the European Union, we speak about the Europeans, they don't have also the financial means. Not only the European Union didn't create it to become a new military bloc, but they don't have the financial means
But the United States,
to.
but the United States cannot do it alone. The United States, the
No, I
thing is,
agree.
the thing
Yeah,
is, and I've mentioned this before. Um, People are war weary. People don't want the United States to simply act unilaterally and just go out there and do things by themselves. And granted, we never really did that. We have worked with other nations, but for the most part, we did about maybe between 75 to 90% of the legwork. In any case, because of these recent developments taking place in the Middle East, because of the Islamic State declaring itself the Islamic State, and you have Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declaring himself as the Caliph, it definitely changes the political game in the region. And one of the things that it changes is Iran. the relationship of Iran, because the Islamic State considers Iran an enemy. The Iranian government has played an instrumental role in the insurgency in Iraq by supplying the various groups in Iraq with weapons and explosives and intelligence to fight against coalition forces there. That is apparent. And so, in any case, Iran is a regional power that certainly competes with Saudi Arabia, but Iran has a lot to lose in a case like this. Now, in terms of the United States not acting by itself, do you think the United States should open negotiations for Iran in an effort to fight the Islamic State, or no?
I think it's very tricky to open negotiations and what will go to negotiate, because we know Iran wants to be a nuclear power. Yes, we have done it before. Even we have allied with Stalin, and Stalin was not a true American ally. But we need to be very, very cautious if we want to open that kind of negotiations.
Now, then my next question. Do you think, now that's the case, what do you think about Assad? Should the United States reconsider its position regarding Assad? Because one can argue that Assad, regardless of the person that he was, held maintained control of his country and in a region that, and while there was stability, most certainly groups like ISIS or the Islamic State now would not have operated with impunity.
Well, if we adopt a realist approach, yes, we can say we need to reconsider about dealing with Assad, because in this neighborhood you have it's very difficult to select true friends or true people or leaders that they believe in democracy or peace or stability. And with adapting a realist point of view, you can say that we need to reconsider how to deal with Assad. Of course, Assad, as before, is a kind of wants to be a client state of Russia. But right now, it's like which snake is more poisonous.
Exactly.
Is the Islamic State or Assad? And right now, we view more as the Islamic State.
And this conversation is nothing new. The conversation that we're having right now regarding basically should we talk to our enemies? Should the United States talk to our enemies or their enemies, I should say? This has been going on for decades. We did it,
Yes.
like you mentioned, World War II with Russia. We did it with the Mujahideen during the Soviet-Afghan War.
We did it with China.
We've done it with China.
Yeah.
We've done it with various other nations and factions in an effort to kind of either maintain the status quo or to influence our position or the United States' position in the region. And so the questions asked regarding should we consider negotiating with Iran, should we consider negotiating with Assad is nothing new. But I do think that there are valid questions that need to be considered, and a realistic answer needs to be brought up. So I mean that's the tricky situation though, is to what extent are we going to negotiate with these forces? Should we negotiate with them?
Yes, that's correct. It's challenging, also time-consuming, and very complex. Of course, simultaneously, we can go out and find, I mean, there you need to have intelligence. You can find groups that can be more inclined to be pro-American and pro-Western and try to support them. But the Arab Spring and that kind of the new situation has created a very convoluted atmosphere to understand who is if we can call it pro-Western or pro-American or pro-democratic or pro-stability.
And that was the problem that we had saw early on in the Syrian rebellion,
Yes.
the civil war.
Yeah.
Was who's who? What kind of groups are operating against Assad? Well, we come to find out that there are several groups operating against Assad, and each one of them completely different than the next.
Yes, and I think on an economic, I mean, obviously they say that the United States now will surpass Russia and China producing oil that will be good. We're not going to be dependent to the Middle East. For this reason, some in Saudi Arabia doesn't like that, feels that maybe the United States will withdraw even the support from Saudi Arabia. But even if we become, and that will be nice to be oil independent from the Middle East, that also cannot withdraw because the Middle, I mean, that chaotic situation in the Middle East is easily will spread to other regions.
Absolutely.
In Europe, they have immigrants, illegal immigrants. The German intelligence say that they are also some of them jihadists. You have Central Asia. You have other regions that they will spill over.
And that goes back to what we talked about earlier with social media and the influence that it
Yes.
has with people across the world.
Yes.
Um, let's revisit this issue. Uh, no doubt this is not going away anytime soon. Like I said earlier, I do believe that the Islamic State will fracture. It will not last. Uh, History seems to indicate that there will be a fracture among the rank and file of this group, of this nation, pseudo nation.
Yeah.
So we'll we'll basically wait that out and see when that happens. Otherwise, I expect a military response, most certainly against the Islamic State itself. To the extent of its success remains to be seen. But regardless, nations across the world, they're not just going to simply ignore this. They might have a different degree of involvement in trying
Yeah.
to remedy the situation, but it's we'll see what happens.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, Vassilios, for your
You're
time.
welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is The Conversation. My name is Kris Kaim, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.